Welcome to Unlearning with me, Skumbuzo Jwaha, where each week we talk about a social issue through the lens of a book or a few books I've read that week. This week we're filming at Exclusive Books Hyde Park, and thank you very much to the venue for hosting us once again. It is a beautiful bookstore, and all of the books that we read are available at the store. So this week we've read two books. Sabotage by Cowan, which is a book on Eskom. The second one is Factfulness by Rosling. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, also to switch on your notifications bell so you get a reminder every time we upload an episode. In his book, Sabotage, Cowan speaks about the facts around Eskom and what it is that has happened historically and what has led up to the current situation now, where there is what is called load shedding, which are effectively rolling blackouts. Our second book, Factfulness by Rosling, is one that speaks about how it is that we perceive facts in today's society. He tries to expose our biases towards thinking of everything in a negative light and always assuming the worst. And he uses historical facts and data to prove that, in fact, the world is much better off than it was before. It's an important book to discuss the issue around Eskom because it would seem that so much around Eskom is clouded around misinformation and politics, and the lens through which we view it is our own experience of rolling blackouts. So the situation either seems bleak or better than it seems, and Factfulness helps us to cut through all of that and focus on what is actually the truth.
Everyone, this is Kyle, author of Sabotage, Eskom and the Siege. So I've been asked to just answer two questions about my book and about Eskom in general. So the first question is, what is the general truth about sabotage at Eskom? So for a long time now, people working at Eskom have suspected that people inside the company are actually actively sabotaging power stations to either increase or cause load shedding, to try and either make money off contracts to fix the power stations, or to actually, just generally cause a state of chaos and make the current leadership of Eskom look bad. There is actual evidence of sabotage at some Eskom power stations, and it appears that the problem is getting worse. So this is something that I've argued repeatedly, and what I also argue about in my book is that we need a solid law enforcement response from government to try and address this problem, because it's really just getting worse and worse. The second question was about whether Eskom can actually be run effectively as a state-owned power utility. I believe it can, but unfortunately what it would require is for a lot of our power stations to be shut down for extended periods of time, and a lot of money would be required to then fix these power stations step by step from the ground up. South Africa can't do that because we have a shortage of generation capacity, which means that the power stations have to keep running. Otherwise, load shedding would be far worse than it is even now. So the current plan to break Eskom into three separate entities to reduce debt, to address cash flow issues, is the best plan going forward, while other alternatives are being sought to fill the generation capacity gap.
So, if you're like me and many other South Africans, today I woke up to no electricity when I was planning to leave the house on my way to work. And it is a frustrating feeling to know that so much is out of your control. And there are a few things that directly affect all South Africans equally, regardless of class, as power outages do. And unfortunately, what then happens is we are unable to discuss the issues of power outages in a fact-based analysis. For example, power outages and blackouts are not a phenomenon that is unique to South Africa. In the US, for example, there is currently a heat wave going on in the Northern Hemisphere. And part of the consequences of having a heat wave in many parts of the United States of America has been that the grid has collapsed. And there are many places that have, as a consequence, fallen victim to power outages, as this next video will show.
Power shortages, blackouts, damaged infrastructure. The U.S. electrical grid is under strain. Large, sustained outages have happened with increasing frequency in the U.S. over the past 2 decades, according to a Wall Street Journal review of federal data, driven largely by weather-related problems.
In South Africa, what makes things much more difficult is the political climate under which everything exists. For example, when we speak about the current CEO of Eskom, Ande de Ruyter, there is so much around whether he is competent or incompetent, losing sight of the fact that over the last 7 years, Eskom has had 11 CEOs. Now, if Ande de Ruyter is one that would be described as incompetent, every single one of them can be described as that. So then the issue must be something else. Eskom, as a government-run parastatal, must be experiencing issues that go beyond simply whoever is heading the parastatal. In his book, Cowan explores Ande de Ruyter's work experience and how it is that he became CEO of Eskom and what qualifies him to be in this position. But also he does good work in exploring what may be perceived as his shortfalls.
Ultimately, to put load shedding to bed, what we need is additional capacity, because the system as it is at the moment is still unreliable and unpredictable.
In his book, Factfulness, Hans Rosling speaks to us and tries to explain that so many of us have an issue discussing the facts, not because of a low or higher education than others, but simply because there seems to be a gap instinct between what are the facts and what is actually going on. And there is nothing that exhibits this more clearly as how it is that the politics surrounding Eskom cause us to have an opaque view of what it is that is actually going on. For example, the ANC infighting between the factions, those who support former President Jacob Zuma and those who support the current administration under Cyril Ramaphosa, seem to have very differing views about what it is that needs to be done in order to run Eskom and other parastatals more effectively and efficiently. And undergirding all of this is the question of how it is that we run our economy more effectively. Those supporting Ramaphosa still believe that what is needed is to break Eskom apart into 3 units so that they can be run more efficiently. While those who support former President Jacob Zuma, who purport themselves to be more left-leaning, believe that Eskom should remain entirely in the state's hands so that it can be run more efficiently. Now, if you're an ordinary South African watching all of this, all you care about is whether or not you have electricity. And yet what is reported is either of these two sides of the story, when all that is needed are actually the facts. And that is why Cowan's book, Sabotage, is so important in this regard.
The utility is now recruiting skilled personnel, including former senior Eskom plant managers and engineers from the private sector. Some of these had left Eskom and had gone to various locales in the world. And Eskom is now seeking to bring them back.
Eskom has reached the stage of hopelessness. There are a lot of skilled and qualified people that can be recalled to come and save the day. But for factional reasons, they will never call them, even if we stay in darkness, because factions don't agree that the skill must be brought back.
Whatever your feelings are about what is happening at Eskom, particularly with regards to how Eskom's load shedding, actually blackouts, are affecting your life, it is worth considering the context in which rolling blackouts happen within the South African democracy. And that is that we're a society that remains one of, if not consistently, the most unequal in the world. And however much rolling blackouts affect those who are wealthy and those within the middle class, and those who have to wake up and have a difficult time going to work, it is much worse for the poor. For example, there have been multiple instances of shack dwellers having to take braziers into their homes in order to stay warm, and thereafter dying as a consequence of carbon monoxide poisoning, simply because electricity was not available. And those are the stories that should actually touch the hearts of all of us and be the lens through which we focus on when we speak about Eskom. Because lives are being lost. While it's important that we discuss the economic consequences, it's important that we discuss things within the context of how it is that lives and particularly individuals who live amongst the poor and most disenfranchised in society are being affected as a consequence.